Oh, okay. Yeah, very good morning to you. We start the fourth day of the Faculty Development Program, empowering educators through educational value, revisiting the value, with the quote of the great scientist Albert Einstein. Education is not of Education is not the learning of facts, but the training of the mind to think. So make the mind to think ethically also. Now I welcome Dr. S. Bhuvaneshwari, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Saurashtra College, Madurai, to introduce today's guest of honor, Dr. Elangovan Sir, Associate Professor, Department of English, Thiagarajar College, Madurai. I personally take this opportunity to welcome Dr. Elangovan Sir, who has immediately accepted our invitation without any hesitation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning, my dear faculty members. And it is indeed a great pleasure to introduce. Sir, am I not audible, sir?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
I'm audible. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It's indeed a great pleasure to introduce our chief guest resource person of today's FDP, Dr.M.Elangovan. We are privileged to have with us today Dr. M. Elangovan, Associate Professor, Thiagarajar College, Madurai, as our esteemed resource person for this 1 week faculty development program. Dr. Elangovan has made significant contribution to the field of literature, literary theories, and translation. With an academic career marked by dedication and excellence, Dr. Elangovan has published extensively with the numerous research articles in both national and international journals and has been a prominent speaker at several prestigious institutions. His expertise spans across diverse areas, including post-colonial literature, translation studies, and literary theory, which has made him a sought-after resource person at many renowned institutions. Dr. Elangovan is also a prolific author, having authored 6 books: Viriya Tiranda Siragugal, Kalumara Kavidegal, Moral Aesthetics, an anthology of Avaya's didactic poetry, Poems of Madness, Eludha Mudiya Haiku, Sulandrum Veyil Pinnum Suriyan, each contributing to the academic landscape with in-depth exploration of literary texts. He has done a minor research project focusing on post-colonial studies in the works of renowned Pakistani author Bapsi Sidhwa. His research interests and academic endeavors continue to inspire students and faculty alike, making him an invaluable contributor to the academic community. We are excited to have him to share his wealth of knowledge and expertise us during this wonderful faculty development program in the topic, the role of teachers in enhancing aesthetic values. Sir, we welcome you, sir. We are glad to have you. Thank you so much, sir. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, ma'am, for your introduction. Respected principal of both the organizing colleges, my dear friends in the Department of English in both the Saurashtra College and the Road College, and my dear participants. I deem it a great pleasure to deliver a talk on a much needed topic of this hour, the role of teachers in enhancing aesthetic values. If you carefully look at the title, I have given my title as the role of teachers in enhancing aesthetic values. The key word in my topic is not aesthetic values. The key word in my topic is enhancing, which indirectly means that man is born with aesthetic sensibility. We are all engulfed within idea of the aesthetic values. So as human beings, we do all have the basic sensitivity of appreciating beauty, appreciating and understanding and developing these aesthetic values. So, okay, as individual human beings, we are all endowed with that capacity within our own limitations to make ourselves happy with all the aesthetic sensibilities we do have. But the question is, how far we are enabling ourselves to make ourselves as efficient teachers in various fields, to enrich the knowledge of our students with aesthetic values. That's the major issue that I want to address now. So, I would like to begin my speech with this small phrase, which may recall the famous line of John Keats, beauty is truth and truth beauty. This is my phrase. Beauty in teaching and teaching is beauty. So the first step that we have to do is all these teachers belonging to various fields should develop some basic ideas about the aesthetic principles. By aesthetic principles, I don't mean that there are rules and regulations, because art goes beyond any rule and regulation. Art is not confined with the rules and regulations. But we have to find out certain basic things to enhance the aesthetic values among our students. So the first and foremost duty of a teacher is to make himself or herself with the idea of what is art. I am a maths teacher teaching mathematics to my students. I may be a physics teacher. I may be a teacher belonging to the department of botany or zoology. But how far my relationship is with the art form that can give me some kind of an overall insight into my own subject. Can poetry help me in teaching a formula? Can poetry or music or painting can help me to give some ideas, elaborating the concepts of my own subjects? These are all the questions that teachers should ask now. So, I request the teachers, and I also think that this platform is a conglomeration of teachers from various subjects. So we have to equip ourselves with the basic ideas of art, some little bit of poetry, little bit of literature, some ideas, basic ideas about music, some basic ideas about paintings, some basic ideas about sculpture. So with all these backgrounds, we can go to the subjects, making our students a powerful learner of their own choice. So first we have to provide ourselves the resources and experiences. By resources and experiences, I mean that I have to give my subject matter, to deliver my subject matter with my personal experience. As a teacher, I may have various personal experiences. So I have to connect these personal experiences while teaching other subjects, because experiences are always expandable ones. So with these experiences, the teachers can play a vital role in enhancing aesthetic values among the students. Another thing that I would like to give as a bit of suggestion to the teaching fraternity is that we have to create a classroom which is technically called as an inviting classroom. It is a technical term usually found in aesthetic classes, classes which teach music, paintings, poetry, creative writing, and all other things. So I believe that this inviting classroom can be experienced with the students of mathematics, the students of physics, the students of chemistry, and all other subjects. By inviting classroom, I mean that is a definition for this. There is a technical definition for this inviting classroom. I will read out. An inviting classroom is a completely comfortable class, both for the students and the teachers. The students come out with their own aesthetic ideas. Suppose I am teaching basic calculations to my students or some difficult theorems to my students. At that time, I can make use of certain ideas related to poetry, related to art, related to music. I can explain certain basic principles in science with the help of certain lines from literature, if I know it. That is why I say that teachers of all branches should know something of everything. That something of everything is the key word today. Another thing is that in an inviting classroom, the teacher becomes a role model of enhancing the aesthetic value of the students. Because the teacher should know that there is an interconnectivity among the various branches of knowledge. I now suddenly remember one famous line of Walter Pater. We all know that there are two movements in literature. One is art for art's sake, and the other one is art for life's sake. Walter Pater is a pioneer of art for art's sake movement. In one of his essays, he says these famous lines: all poetry aspires towards painting. All poetry aspires towards painting. All painting aspires towards music. All music aspires towards silence. So, when Walter Pater says these lines, he means that there is an interconnectivity among these three varied art forms: poetry, painting, music. And all these things metamorphoses themselves to another platform to make the connoisseur of arts as a real connoisseur of arts, having the ability to develop their own existence and survival with aesthetic values. So, what I would like to say to the teaching community today is that we should have different types of knowledge, abilities to deliver something about these art forms, And we have to evaluate how far our students are learning our own subjects with these aesthetic values. And the criteria with which I am going to evaluate the performances of my learners, my students, is one of the key roles that the teacher or the teachers have to play in the classrooms. And another thing is that when I talk about the inviting classroom, in this context, it means that I have already told you that the teacher has to be a role model. So first, the teacher should have the idea of what is beautiful and what is not beautiful, what is valuable and what is not valuable. These are the things that a teacher should have in his or her own mind while teaching any subject. Because when I teach, I may be a teacher of literature. I may be teaching Tamil literature, or I may be teaching English, or I may be teaching French, or I may be teaching physics or something else. But the thing is that, do I have the basic sensibility of making myself and my learners, my students, understanding or grasping the differentiation between what is beautiful and what is not beautiful? So here we have two terms. One is beautiful, the other one is valuable. Whatever is beautiful is a valuable thing. Whatever is a valuable thing is beautiful. By valuable, I don't mean money. By valuable, I mean values. Values are eternal. Beauty gives you this eternal chance to evaluate ourselves with the valuable things. So I have to integrate myself with these beautiful concepts of beauty and valuable ideas of what is valuable and what is not valuable. Suppose if I happen to be a teacher of botany, I am there in my classroom teaching the structure, or I don't know the technical terms of how a botany teacher describes or using the botanical names of various types of flowers. He is teaching something about flowers in his classroom. And when Dr. Bhuvaneshwari was talking or introducing myself to the participants of this FTP program, she was telling me that I had published books in Tamil and also in English. So I'm well versed. I'm not so well versed, but I know a little bit in Tamil literature. So I can relate. There is a poem in Tamil, modern Tamil literature written by Kalyanji. It's a very famous poem. I have several times told this poem in my own classroom to my students, generations of students. For the last 20 years, I have been telling this poem to my students when I am teaching romantic poetry, whether poems of Keats or Shelley or Wordsworth or any other poem. When a teacher of botany knows this poem, he will inculcate the idea of how far the flower is so beautiful. Because when a student looks at, a botany student especially, looks at the flower from the knowledge that he has gained from his botany classes, will definitely improve when he or she knows this poem of Kalyanji, and he can understand the explanations of that teacher. This is the poem. I hope, though this is an FTB, I don't think that Tamil is not barred from this platform. This is how Kalyanji writes. Margali குளிரில் அதிகாலை எழுந்து வாசலில் சிதறிக் கிடக்கும் பன்னீர் பூக்களை அவசரமாய் பெருக்கித் தள்ளுவாள் அம்மா. மார்கழி குளிரில் அதிகாலை எழுந்து வாசலில் சிதறிக் கிடக்கும் பன்னீர் பூக்களை அவசரமாய் பெருக்கித் தள்ளுவாள் அம்மா. This is the place where Kalyanji gives a small break to his poem. And after leaving a small break, he continues the next line. And when we listen to this poem, we may think that Amma in this poem may have some work, so that she is going through the work of cleaning the gate or the vassal of her house in a hurried way. We may be thinking about மார்கழி குளிரில் அதிகாலை எழுந்து வாசலில் சிதறி கிடக்கும் பன்னீர் பூக்களை அவசரமாய் பெருக்கி தள்ளுவாள் அம்மா. This is how Kalyanji gives the aesthetic value to the end of his poem. அம்மாவை விட அழகாய் கோலம் போட்டால் அம்மாவுக்கு பிடிக்காது. This is the line. Now I will tell you. மார்கழி குளிரில் அதிகாலை எழுந்து வாசலில் சிதறி கிடக்கும் பன்னீர் பூக்களை அவசரமாய் பெருக்கி தள்ளுவாள் அம்மா. அம்மாவை விட அழகாய் கோலம் போட்டால் அம்மாவுக்கு பிடிக்காது. When a teacher of botany makes use of this poem in explaining the structure or the symmetry of the flower to his students, definitely they will enjoy. This is what I mean by inculcating or enhancing aesthetic value among the students of science. This poem will definitely have some kind of impact upon the minds of the students to connect themselves forever with what a flower is. They will not have only that scientific view of dissecting the flower, but appreciating the beauty of flower. Wordsworth has beautifully said in one of his poems, Tables Turned Around, we murder to dissect. That is one of the key sentences of Wordsworth. I now suddenly recall that line also. When a botany student tries to dissect the flower, he murders the flower. That is what Wordsworth has beautifully captured. If I have that aesthetic flower, my hands will hesitate to dissect the flower. Of course, as a student of botany, I will do that. As a student of zoology, I will dissect the insect on the table, on my research table. I will do that. But I will have the aesthetic value of what I am doing. That is another thing. Calabria has written another famous poem regarding this. It is also about the limitations of human life, because we think that we are not having enough and efficient time to appreciate the beauty. But nature will never come to our own way and will never say that, no, this is how you have to look at me. It is your bounden duty to look at me and enjoy my beauty. Nature will never come at our doorsteps and will say that I am here to give you eternal enjoyment. No, it is our duty to go and appreciate the beauty of nature. Aesthetic value comes only through that kind of human effort, human mind, and human engagement with the various forms of nature. So aesthetic value can be learned in various ways. Each and every movement of life, each and every moment of life can give you something beautiful. I see as a poet, as a man engaged myself very actively in writing poems. If suddenly some lines come into my mind while I am delivering my lecture, I have not written that line. Suppose if I say that, if these are the lines that suddenly come into my mind, this is a poem. Now I tell you, all of a sudden, all of a sudden, a butterfly is a flying life. A butterfly is a flying life. And life is a flying butterfly. Of course, I am not perfect in these composing in these two lines, but it may give you some kind of aesthetic value. So another poet, Calabria, he says these lines by saying that aesthetic value can be learned at any time, because we have to go to nature. It is our responsibility to enhance the aesthetic value as teachers. Of course, it is an example to the general public, but we can take it as an example. நீ இருக்கும் திசைக்கு முகம் காட்டி, நீ இருக்கும் திசைக்கு முகம் காட்டி உன் சதுரமான எதிர்பார்ப்பில் பூக்காது தொட்டிப்பூ. நீ இருக்கும் திசைக்கு முகம் காட்டி உன் சதுரமான எதிர்பார்ப்பில் பூக்காது தொட்டிப்பூ. பூ பூத்தல் அது இஷ்டம், போய் பார்த்தல் உன்னிஷ்டம். This is what Kalapriya has written. பூ பூத்தல் அது இஷ்டம், போய் பார்த்தல் உன்னிஷ்டம். Okay, most of us are teachers of English literature. So we all know, we are all familiar with T.S. Eliot's Wasteland. And we are all familiar with his famous play, Murder in the Cathedral. Wasteland and the Murder in the Cathedral are two famous literary works where Eliot gives his concept of time. Of course, in his 4 quarters also, he talks about the concept of time. When I taught or when I teach Wasteland, or whenever I have the opportunity to teach Wasteland, I try to give what is the concept of Eliot about time. Eliot says that Eliot has a strong belief in time. According to Eliot, time is an ever-flowing force. There is no fragmentation in time. It is human brain or human mind which demarcates time into various segments, small sections, from 11 o'clock to 12 o'clock, from 12 to 1, from 1 to 2. But a poet, a sensitive man with the aesthetic value will see that time has no fragmentation. The sediments of time will always flow. There are no fragmentations. So according to Eliot, when he says that in my beginning is my end, time is a circular one. In this line, he means that time is a circular one. That there is no beginning, there is no end. This is what Eliot means by saying, in my beginning is my end. There is another famous line in Eliot. Time past and time present is in time future. Time past and time present is in time future. When I teach these lines, I have several times told my students that there are some connectivities, interconnectivities with these concepts of Eliot, with these perceptions of Eliot, the Einstein's concept of time, theory of relativity. When I talk about theory of relativity, among all the languages of the world, please remember, among all the languages of the world, Tamil is the only language that had a poem about Einstein's theory of relativity, especially the formula E is equal to mc squared. In the early 1970s, there was a poem written by a famous Tamil poet, Tharumu Sivaram. He wrote a poem about E is equal to mc squared. No one has written a poem about this equation. Remember the time. It was in 1970, early 90s. A famous Tamil poet. I have the collection with me, Pramil's poem. Tamil is the only language which has this idea of connecting poetry with a scientific formula. No world poet has written. Nobody knows this. I tried to translate this poem into English, but I failed because I could not bring, or I was not able to get the depth of Pramil's lines into English. So I dropped the idea because it is so dense with the language. The words are so powerful that I couldn't translate that poem. Otherwise, I could have done it. It's really a very famous poet. And so, when T.S. Eliot, or when a physics teacher is teaching Einstein's theory of relativity, if that physics teacher knows Eliot, he will connect these two things. Because according to Einstein's theory of relativity, time is having its own quality of changing according to its space and its energy. And quantum physics deals with this time element. And if you have the knowledge about Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time, I have read that book and it is a very beautiful novel. I relate myself immediately with the lines of Eliot. Okay. So many things. So if a maths teacher wants to say to his students, so suppose if he is teaching calculus to his students, he is teaching various theta, sine theta, cos theta, and all these things. Okay. If my students know that I'm a little bit humorous and I play with words whenever I teach something, anything in my classroom. Suppose this is the line that I have composed. When a maths teacher wants to teach sine theta, cos theta, if any maths teacher is here, if he is conscious about the caste discrimination in India, he can make use of my line. Sine theta, cos theta, ni theta, non theta. Of course, this is what I can say about. Oh, so this is a poem that I wrote some years back. It is not even a poem, but it is a rhetorical question. When existentialism was here as a philosophy, when existentialism was here, it had an aesthetic value. Many philosophers, especially I was studying in Madras College, there was the Department of Philosophy, because the Madras College at that time was the only department. Of course, American College too had its Department of Philosophy, but in Madras College there were many stalwarts in the Department of Philosophy. I used to go to the department, attend the classes of philosophy, and existentialism was introduced to me by those teachers. I learned the basics of existentialism. And when Tamil writers wanted to give these existentialism to the readers of Tamil language, Nagalan was one of the famous poets. Any teacher in philosophy, in the Department of Philosophy, can make use of Nagaland's short stories and Nagaland's poems and Atmanam's poems if they know these things. These are all the ways. Nagaland has very beautifully written in one of his நான் இறந்த பிறகு எனக்காக நடத்தும் இறுதி அஞ்சலி கூட்டத்திற்கு என்னை அழைக்காதீர்கள். நான் இறந்த பிறகு எனக்காக நடக்கும் இறுதி அஞ்சலி கூட்டத்திற்கு என்னை அழைக்காதீர்கள், ஏனெனில் என்னால் வர இயலாது. This is what Nagaland wrote. This poem is the core poem which teaches the basic ideas of existentialism. So, what I now say is that aesthetic values, they have their own usefulness. Without these usefulness, there are some practical aspects in teaching or imparting or enhancing these aesthetic values to our students. Why should they have aesthetic values? Why should a student of mathematics have aesthetic value? Because when he or she has that kind of aesthetic value, the creativity in his own field will be improved. For that, the teacher should be a role model. The maths teacher should know something about the basics of art. So creativity is enhanced. These are all the usefulness of aesthetic values. Creativity, critical thinking, and another thing is that learning becomes more engaging and more meaningful in other branches of knowledge when these aesthetic values are imparted to the students through the teachers when they are real role models. And another thing is that the very core of human being is there in their emotional aspects. We can't live by knowledge alone. Again, I am reminded of all of a sudden, I am reminded of Eliot because he is more in me. He will come up immediately. Whenever I talk, I have Eliot in me. In fourth quarter, he says, this is also a sir. Where is the wisdom we have lost it in knowledge? Where is the knowledge we have lost it in information? These are the questions that he asks. Where is the wisdom? We have lost it in knowledge. Where is the knowledge? We have lost it in information. So, Eliot tries to give a hierarchical order to these three things. Wisdom first, knowledge second, information second. But all these things should be connected aesthetically. So, aesthetic values definitely enhances the emotional aspects of the learners of other subjects. So there is an emotional touch in giving these aesthetic values. So intelligence and emotional aspect, these things should go together. At this juncture, the role of the teachers in enhancing the aesthetic values is that they should make the students be aware of the differences between, as I said earlier, how to differentiate the beautiful from the non-beautiful things. I don't say that there are ugly things, because ugliness is against the aesthetics. If I have the concept of ugliness, I am against the aesthetics, because aesthetics includes observing and enjoying ugliness also. Because ugliness has its own beautiful aspect. Because it is not a negative thing. It is definitely not a thing to be hated. It is a thing to be observed with an unbiased mind. Only an unbiased mind will have this kind of. That is why I use the words very carefully. Beautiful and of course, I don't use the word ugliness, but there are certain. Human mind has its own. What shall I say? Limitation. It tries to fragment everything. Divisions are always there in the functioning of human brain. That's why it makes all these divisions in a very natural way. So, aesthetic values, the teacher should give the basic concepts related to what are beautiful things and what are non-beautiful things, what are valuable things and what are non-valuable things. Another thing that what happens in the invited classroom when the teacher tries to impart or enhance the aesthetic values among the students is that such classes are filled with providing a balance, remember, a balance in maintaining emotional and intellectual domain of learning process. This is very, very important aspect of how a teacher can provide a balanced situation for the students to maintain a cordial relationship between the two domains. One is the emotional domain and the other one is the intellectual domain. So there should be a balance. Only when the aesthetic values are there, the teacher can make use of all these things. Okay. Another thing is that what should a teacher do in the classroom to enhance these aesthetic values? First thing is that, as I said earlier, of course, the Pope has already said a little knowledge is a dangerous thing, but at least we should have a little knowledge about every art form, about music, about literature, about sculpture, about paintings, and all these things. So when I teach, I make my students learn the facts with aesthetic values. My students learn or acquire the basic knowledge of my subject, and they are able to demonstrate various competencies which are embedded in them. Because as a teacher, I have to know the nuances of how to identify the aesthetic aspects among the students. That is my duty. That's my duty of making my students go into the domain of art, learning or connecting the art with his or her own subject. And multiple chances and choices are there for a teacher in making. In the modern world, we have too many technical tools that can be used by the teacher in the classroom. Your artificial intelligence is there. Now we are talking, I'm sitting in my room and you are all sitting in your houses, and we are able to connect ourselves with this modern technology. 20 years back, it was not possible. Now it is possible. So, my idea is that multiple chances and choices are there for every teacher to enhance the aesthetic values among the students. The only thing is that the teachers have to make certain efforts to equip themselves with the basic ideas of understanding these various, because all these art forms are interrelated things. A maths teacher, because as I said, by profession, the maths teacher is a maths teacher. By profession, the teacher of physics is a physics teacher. But by birth, they are all human beings. That is why I say that art is the fundamental thing, and the other subjects are the superstructure in our survival. Another thing is that when I try to impart or enhance these aesthetic values, there are certain key aspects that the teacher should take into consideration. The frequency of my usage of art forms in my classroom, that decides the level and standard of my students. How far I am able to quote from other fields is very important. If I have 4 classes or only 3 classes per week, at least I should give 10 minutes of time to talk about or to relate my basic core subject with the art form that I know, that I am familiar with. So the frequency is very important. Frequently, the teachers are expected to give references and examples and experiences from art form. And another thing is that timeliness is very important. Frequency also means the time, but I don't mean here that idea. Timeliness, when and where you use the art form in delivering our core subject, that's very important. The teacher has to decide at what juncture of time that I have to use the aesthetic aspect when I teach my core subject. The timeliness is also very important. That is what we mean by the sense of timing. Another thing is that frequency, timeliness, and then as a teacher, as I have already told you, an invited classroom made to come out with various feedbacks about my teaching, about the subject matter, about physics or about maths, about zoology or about microbiology, whatever it is. The students, if they are given aesthetic values, they come out with positive feedbacks. That's the major impact of imparting aesthetic values to the non-major students of art. Their responses are always positive, and researchers have proved several times that when a maths teacher or physics teacher or teacher of chemistry uses certain art forms in the classrooms, the students enjoy their classes very often. They come out with positive feedbacks about the core subjects. So what happens at the end is that the learning process becomes very easy for both the teacher and the learners. So the main idea is here, I'm not asking you to teach in a perfect way what art forms are. No, that's not my, because we're basically teaching mathematics. I'm basically teaching chemistry or zoology or computer science, whatever it is. But my learning process would be effective, for which I have to use the artistic domain of my personal life. So the fundamental purpose of aesthetic value in the inverted classrooms is to enhance the beauty of art and the artfulness of beauty. The beauty of art and the artfulness of beauty. So with that point in my mind, I move on to the next aspect, that we have certain questions with us. What are the basic rules of aesthetic values? How do they function? Aesthetic values deal with nature and the values of art. As I said, I have quoted Calabria's poems. I have quoted Wordsworth's lines. We murdered too. Whither is fled the visionary gleam? Where is it now, the glory and the dream? So what happens is that, as W.H. Davis has very aptly pointed out, that we are all living in the modern world that we don't have time to stand and stare. But aesthetic values make you stop at least for a fraction of a second to look at what are the beautiful things that surround you in your atmosphere, in your place, in your building, in your classroom. Some beautiful conversations may be going on. Some beautiful movements of life may be going on. And we have to be aware of all these beautiful movements of and moments of our life. So, aesthetic values deal with nature and the values of art. Another thing is that though the learners are engaged with learning their core subjects, aesthetic values provide these students to come out with responses which are directly or indirectly connected with natural objects. Because they are also observers of the objects of this world. No one is free from the world in which we are living. So the objects that we daily see are the objects which can provide us these aesthetic values. So there are various fields. We all know that. Music is there, literature is there, painting is there, drawing is there, sculpture is there, natural scenery of various places are there, modeling is there, paperwork is there. So many art forms are here. We have to make use of these art forms. So when I teach these art forms, what happens in my classroom or in my invited classroom is that I make my students become aware of their conditions. I make my students become aware of their limitations. I make my students become as the learners of certain other areas. For example, when I teach Keats's poem, Ode to the Grecian Urn, it is a poem about an urn. So a poem is about an artifact. The urn has so many carvings around it. Keats was sensitive enough to observe the urn in the museum, and he was able to recollect those carvings on the urn, on the outside of the urn, and he was able to recollect all those things, and he wrote that poem. So the lovers in the carvings are eternally in the process of loving each other. The people who are taking the calf to the place of sacrificing, they are eternally moving towards their places. So when I teach something about matter, I can make use of what kind of solidness is there in the concept of matter when I am a teacher of physics. I can make use of this poem that matter never changes if it is in an art form. If it is in an art form. That is, so what here Keats has done a wonderful thing of connecting two different art or three different art forms. For example, one is the urn by itself is the first and fundamental art form. And another one, we don't know whether the same man who made the urn carved the pictures. We don't know. Somebody might have done or carved the pictures around the urn. We don't know. Maybe the same potter might have done the same one. So two artists are there already in the making of that urn. Now the third art form is the poem. Keats comes into the scene. When I teach the poem to my students, I become the fourth man to connect these three art forms. I give my own interpretations. That is why time flows. That is how art survives. So as a teacher, this is my responsibility to connect the past with the present. So the time in which the urn was made is connected with the time in which the poet wrote that poem and the time in which the teacher now is teaching the poem to the classroom, to the students in the classroom. So three times are interconnected. Three different domains of times are interconnected. This is the potentiality of art. When W.H. Auden wrote that poem, Musée des Beaux-Arts, after seeing the famous poet painting in Bruegel's painting in the museum, he wrote that famous poem, Musée des Beaux-Arts, the Museum of Arts. There he describes three different scenes. I hope many of you may be aware of the theme of that poem. There W.H. Auden describes a beautiful picture, like Keats describes the urn. On the one side, Jesus Christ is on the cross. On the other side of the painting, the famous mythological character Icarus is falling down because of his effort to reach the sun with the waxen wing made by his father. He is falling down. On the other left side, you see Jesus is dying and he is suffering from a lot of pain and he is bleeding. He is with his last words, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. Oh God, why have you abandoned me? And in the middle of the painting, you see that certain people are working in the fields, reaping the corns and binding the corns like the little girl in the Wordsworth's poem Solitary Reaper. And beyond that picture, there is another small fraction of a painting that a vast sea is there and a ship is moving. Some people are standing on the deck. But what is happening, what is the main theme of that poem is that nobody is watching the great sufferings taking on the two sides of the painting. On the one side, the Son of God is dying with his pain, and on the other side, a young boy is falling down because of his attempt to reach the sun. Great sufferings of human life. They have become the icons of sufferings. But the world moves without noticing these two sufferings because suffering cannot be shared. That is the main theme of W.H. Auden. When I know the aesthetic value of this painting, when I teach the poem to my students, I try to connect that poem with various levels of suffering. So why I have quoted these two forms? On the one side we have Grecian urn, and on the other side we have both are poems coming out of other. But this is how Walter Peter also come. Every poem tries to aspires towards painting. That's what that is what happened in the poem by W.H. Auden. The eternal silence that is there in the last line of Walter Peter is the unheard silence. Okay, so aesthetic values have their own important roles to play. They have to be very careful also, because as teachers we should not make our students going towards the low art forms. That is very important one. By saying some minor poet, or of course I cannot name certain poets, but I cannot quote lower forms of art in my classrooms. That's there I have to learn the art of discrimination. F.R. Lewis talks about the three kinds of art form, or three kinds of literature: highbrow literature, lowbrow literature, and middlebrow literature. As teachers, we always go in for highbrow literature, highbrow art, not popular fiction, not popular forms of art, not popular or lower level films. Because we know the valuelessness of this art form. They don't have eternal values, only great value. Dostoevsky's novels have greater roles to play. Whereas some modern writer, I cannot name the writer in the open platform, but I know a teacher should know how to discriminate between higher art and lower art. Aesthetic values should be rightly imparted to the learners. That's really a very powerful one. So I have to discriminate how far I am able to give this kind of higher experiences with higher aesthetic values to my students. Because there are three levels of life. We have to live that kind of thing. One is living or surviving. Okay, first fundamental thing is. Next one is living with some meaning and purpose and goals. The third one is existence. Every human being, of course, we consciously or unconsciously choose our own limited plane of any one of these three things. Only most of the people in this world merely survive. Only a few people go to the second plane of their life, which is called living, with some kind of meaning given to their life. And the third level is the highest one, existence. So now, as a teacher, it is my duty to make my students to move from the lower level to the middle level, and from the middle level to the higher level. That's what my aim as a teacher, to impart the aesthetic values. Because survival is very important. Yes, I have to search for my food. I have to search for my place. I have to search for my clothes, but this is not my life. I have something else to do. We have to do certain things. Of course, in order to survive, we have to live. Find out sometimes some profession. My idea is here: give meaning to your profession. Then we begin to live. If we are in touch with the higher plane, we move on to the third plane of our life where we exist. So, from survival to living, and from living to existence, from existence to, I don't know, because I don't have faith in other things. So, because I have my own scientific approach to life, I see what these are the only ways of living, and beyond this, I don't have anything to see. So, as a teacher, that becomes my bounden duty and responsibility to impart these, what shall I say, making my students aware of all these things. Okay. Another thing is that fundamentally we are all teachers. We are specialized in a subject. We come from different branches of knowledge. And since the departments of English from 2 colleges are conducting this FDP program, I think many teachers may be from the Department of English. Okay. We are equipped with the basic, because we have qualified ourselves and we are appointed as teachers, and we are working sufficiently to make our students learn on the basic knowledge of our subject matter to ours. But is it enough? That's the question. Is it enough if I do my role as a teacher alone? Where do I go for making my students being aware of or being able to be in touch with the values of human life? We are talking about students of other branches, but please look at our own students of English literature. Do they have enough idea of what is real literature? That's the question that we have to ask. Am I in a position to teach with values? Am I in a position to impart these aesthetic values to my students? So I am at the fag end of my career. When I look back at the past years of my teaching life, what do I have? My students have to tell. The legacy that I have left in my career should say how far I had been a teacher, imparting values to my students. So, this FDP program focuses on giving various aspects of teaching processes, and my topic is now is to how to equip ourselves and also our students with these aesthetic values. Appreciating beauty, being sensitive to life. That is what I mean by aesthetic value. I am sensitive. Am I sensitive enough to my life? Am I able to observe things? Am I able to give some time, sufficient time to look at things around me? When I walk around the streets of Madurai, am I able to see the empty throats and empty stomachs with the empty hands? Though I am not in a position to do anything to them, do I have the mind to look at them? Do I have time to look at them? Do I have heart and spirit to look at the problems of these people? I don't have any solution as a teacher. We don't have any solution for the problems of life. At least we should be aware of what kind of life is going on around us. That is what we make ourselves as sensitive teachers. By sensitive, I don't mean that you should be overreacting. I don't mean that. By sensitive, I means being alive to what is happening around you, being alive to the emotions, feelings of others, being alive to the experiences and pains and pangs of others. These are all the things that we have to do. My emotional domain should be filled with these ideas. So when I have these things, I can boldly say that I have fulfilled myself, my duty as a teacher in the classrooms. Every moment I go to my classroom, I have the idea that what should I teach? Am I teaching only the lessons? That's the question that I should ask. Do I do justice to my, not as my duty, not only as a teacher, but as a teacher with values? Where do I connect my teaching the subject matter with the aesthetic values or the values of life? By aesthetic value, I don't mean nothing but the value, good values of this life. Make my students good enough to live their life in a better way, to understand the other people, to being in a responsive way to the pains and sufferings of others, trying to solve their problems in their own small ways. The humble acts of humankind, the graciousness that we have today. So, I think with this, I have given enough ideas about aesthetic values, but I would like to finish with this sentence. Being a teacher is an act of survival. Being a teacher is an act of survival. But becoming a teacher is an act of existential process. Being a teacher is an act of survival, but becoming a teacher is an act of process of existence. So never be content with being a teacher. Become a teacher. There are a lot of differences between being a teacher and becoming a teacher. The moment we are appointed in a place, in a college, in a school, we become teachers. Mere appointments will not give you the satisfaction. Mere chairs and tables in the staff room will not give us the satisfaction. We have to fill the minds of the student, the hearts and minds of the students with the eternal values, with the human life. That is why becoming a teacher is a continuous process. It can never stop. A teacher is a teacher is a teacher. We always teach. Even without opening my mind, I teach something. Even without opening my lips, I teach something. That is the level, highest level that a teacher can go. That is really a highest level that a teacher can go. There is a Zen story. I will tell that story. I hope many people here are in Tamil, knowing Tamil people. Also, I will tell that story in Tamil. குருதர ஜென் கதைகள் ரொம்ப ஆழமானது, ரொம்ப புதிர்த்தன்மைக்குடைய கதைகள் தான் ஜென் கதைகள். இந்த பீயிங் ஏ டீச்சருக்கும் பிகமிங் ஏ டீச்சருக்கும் அந்த ஜென் கதை வந்து ரொம்ப இம்பார்ட்டண்டா இருக்கும்னு நான் நினைக்கிறேன். அதனால அந்த ஜென் கதையை மட்டும் ஒரு கதையை சொல்லிட்டு நான் முடிச்சிடறேன். ஒரு தடவை ஒரு ஜென் மாஸ்டரும் அவரோட சீடரும் ஒரு காட்டு வழியா, பெரிய காடு, அடர்ந்த காடு. They are moving through that forest. They have to cross the forest and reach the other side of the forest. The guru is very old. He has attained a highest level in the art of Zen. He has already come through the forest several times. But the disciple is a very young boy, just 15 to 16 years of old. For the first time, he sees the beauty of the forest. For the first time, he is able to see the dense forest with all its beauty and with all its threats, with all its sounds and all the being and the buzzing sounds of the insects and the chirping sounds of the birds and all these things. பறவைகள் சத்தம் அது அவனுக்கு ரொம்ப சந்தோஷமா இருக்கு. இதுதான் நம்ம நிலைமை. இப்ப நான் அந்த கதை சொல்றேன்னா இது உண்மையிலே நம்மளோட நிலைமையை அப்படியே சொல்றதுதான். ஜென் மாஸ்டர் தான் நம்ம ஸ்டூடெண்ட்ஸ் அதே மாதிரி தான். அவங்க பாட்டுக்கு என்னன்னே தெரியாம கிளாஸ் ரூம்ல வர்றாங்க, காலேஜுக்கு வர்றாங்க, போறாங்க, சண்டை போடுறாங்க, ஜாலியா இருக்காங்க, லைஃபை பத்தி எதுவும் தெரியல. But they don't know that they are moving through a thick forest which is actually dangerous. But they are attracted by the changing nature of the beauty. That's it. Of course, it is a dangerous one. So, அந்த மாதிரி தூரத்துல அந்த ஜென் மாஸ்டரும் அந்த டிசைபிளும் சீடனும் நடந்து வந்துகிட்டே இருக்காங்க. அந்த பையன் ஒவ்வொன்னா பார்த்து மாஸ்டர் சொல்றான், மாஸ்டர் இங்க பாருங்க மரம் எவ்வளவு பெருசா இருக்கு, இங்க பாருங்க அந்த பூ எவ்வளவு அழகா இருக்குன்னு ஒவ்வொன்னா பார்த்து வேந்துக்கிட்டே வரான், ஒவ்வொன்னா பார்த்து சந்தோஷப்பட்டுக்கிட்டே வரான். கடைசியில் அவன் நடந்து வரும்போது ஒரு சலசலசலன்னு ரொம்ப தூரத்திலேயே ஒரு பெரிய நீரோடை சலசலத்து ஓடுற சத்தம் கேட்குது. அந்த பையனுக்கு தண்ணி கிட்டக்கு பார்த்தா தண்ணி பெருக்கெடுத்து ஓடுது. ரொம்ப சந்தோஷம். ஆர்ப்பரித்து வரக்கூடிய ஒரு பெரிய ஓடை. அது பக்கத்துல வந்துடுறாங்க. இப்ப அவங்க அந்த ஓடையை கடந்துதான் அந்த பக்கம் போகணும். அந்த கடக்கிறதுக்கு ஒரு பாலம் இருக்கு, உடன் பிரிட்ஜ் ஒண்ணு இருக்கு. அந்த உடன் பிரிட்ஜ் கிட்ட வந்த உடனே அந்த பையன் நின்று அந்த ஆத்து தண்ணி, அந்த நீரோடை ஓடுற தண்ணி அழகா பார்த்துட்டு ரொம்ப சந்தோஷமா இருக்கு. He becomes so excited in seeing the flooded stream. அப்ப ஒரு வார்த்தை சொல்றான். He tells the வழக்கம் போல அந்த போய் எவ்வளவு அழகா இருக்குன்னு இவ்வளவு நேரம் சொன்ன மாதிரி ஒரு வார்த்தை சொல்றான். மாஸ்டர் இங்க பாருங்க, இந்த ஓடை எவ்வளவு வேகமா ஓடிக்கிட்டு இருக்கு அப்படின்னு. மாஸ்டர் இங்க பாருங்க, இந்த ஓடை எவ்வளவு வேகமா ஓடிக்கிட்டு இருக்குன்னு. இது வரைக்கும் அந்த மாஸ்டர் அந்த பையன் சொன்ன எதுக்குமே பதில் சொல்லல. அவன் அவ்வளவு தூரம் சேட்டை பண்ணிட்டு பேசிக்கிட்டு கத்திக்கிட்டே வரும், அவர் எதுக்குமே பதில் சொல்லல. பின்னாடி திரும்பி பார்த்து சிரிச்சுக்கிட்டே வந்துகிட்டே இருந்தவர் இந்த ஒரு கொஸ்டினுக்கு மட்டும் ஒரு ஆன்சர் கொடுக்குறார். மாஸ்டர் இந்த ஓடைய பாருங்க எவ்வளவு வேகமா ஓடிக்கிட்டு இருக்கு அப்படின்னு அவன் சொன்ன அந்த ஒரு எக்ஸ்கிளமேட்டரி சென்டென்ஸ்க்கு அவர் ஒரு பதில் சொல்றார். நல்லா பாரு, நல்லா பாரு, ஓட மற்றும் ஓடல, பாலமும் ஓடிக்கிட்டு இருக்கு அப்படிங்கிறார். இதுதான் இங்க கதை இதோட முடிஞ்சிடுது. ஓட மற்றும் பாலம் மற்றும் ஓட மற்றும் ஓடல, பாலமும் ஓடிக்கிட்டு இருக்கு அப்படின்னு அது நிப்பாட்டிடுறாரு. ஜென் கதை அங்க அதோட முடியுது. நம்ம தான் இனிமேல் அதை யோசிச்சுக்கணும். அந்த பையன் என்ன யோசிச்சிருப்பான், என்னடா பாலம் அங்கதானே இருக்கு, மாஸ்டர் என்னது பாலம் ஓடுது. அந்த ஜென் கதைகள் எப்பயுமே இப்படி புதிரோட தான் முடியும். All Zen stories end with a riddle. Zen lessons are taught to the disciples of Zen Buddhism in an indirect way. This is what I mean by imparting the highest knowledge of art form. What is the inner meaning of this story is that we are moved and we are able to capture only the surface level movements of things and we are not able to how the inner movements of things. அந்த மாஸ்டர் என்ன மீன் பண்றாரு அப்படின்னா, இந்த பையனுக்கு தண்ணி ஓடுறது மட்டும்தான் தெரியுது, தண்ணி ஓடிக்கிட்டு இருக்கிறது மட்டும்தான் தெரியுது. ஆனா பாலமும் ஓடுதுன்னா அவர் என்ன மீன் பண்றாருன்னா, பாலத்துக்குள்ள ஒரு மாற்றம் நடந்துகிட்டு இருக்குன்றத மீன் பண்றாரு. It means that the bridge is also under the process of change. This is the inner change that we have to impart among our students. Every moment of our classroom teaching should be filled with this kind of either direct or indirect changes in the minds of our students. ஆறு மட்டும் ஓடல, பாலமும் ஓடுதுன்னு அந்த குரு சொன்ன அந்த வார்த்தை அது அப்ப இந்த கதைய அந்த விஷயத்தை கேட்ட அந்த டிசைபிளுக்கு அந்த குரு நேரடியா பாடம் சொல்லல. ஜென் தத்துவம் எப்பயுமே நேரடியா போதிக்கப்படாது. உலகத்தில் பொருட்கள் எப்பொழுதும் மாற்றத்தில் இருக்கும். நம்ம கண்ணுக்கு தெரிகிற மாற்றத்தை மட்டும் கணக்கில் எடுத்துக்கிறோம். கண்ணுக்கு தெரியாம எவ்வளோ, இப்ப நான் உட்கார்ந்து இந்த நிமிஷத்துல பேசிட்டு இருக்கேன், எனக்கு முன்னாடி இருக்கக்கூடிய இந்த லேப்டாப் வந்து ப்ராசஸ்ல இட் இஸ் அண்டர் தி ப்ராசஸ் ஆஃப் சேஞ்சிங், இட் இஸ் பிகமிங் ஓல்டு. ஒரு குழந்தை பிறந்தவுடனே இறக்க ஆரம்பிச்சிருது, அப்படி சொன்னா எப்படி இருக்கும்? இதுதான் உண்மை. ஆனா ஒரு குழந்தை பிறந்தவுடனே இறக்கதான் ஆரம்பிக்குது, அது வாழ ஆரம்பிக்கல. இது ஒரு தத்துவார்த்தமான வார்த்தை தான் அது. ஆனா நம்ம குழந்தை பிறந்துருச்சுன்னு சொல்றோம், ஆனா குழந்தை இறக்க ஆரம்பிக்குது. இப்படிதான் பார்க்கணும். அதாவது நிகிலிஸ்டிக்கா இருக்கலாம், பட் நெகட்டிவ் எல்லாம் சொல்ல முடியாது. பட் திஸ் இஸ் த ஃபேக்ட் ஆஃப் லைஃப். So this inner process that we have to, so we may not know that how many students who are sitting in our classrooms are capable of receiving these inner messages that I impart as a teacher. That's really a very powerful one. That is why I say that being it. So there is a Chinese proverb which is connected with the same Zen story. We don't step into the same river for a second time. We don't step into the same river for a second time. Because முதல் தடவை இறங்கின அந்த ஆறோட தண்ணி நகர்ந்துருச்சு. வலது கால எடுத்து வைக்கிறேன், அந்த தண்ணி போயிருச்சு. அடுத்து இடது கால எடுக்கிறேன், இன்னொரு தண்ணி அந்த இடத்துக்கு வருது. That is why the Chinese proverb says that we don't step into the same river for a second time. சுகுமாரன் தமிழ்ல ஒரு கவிதை எழுதியிருப்பார். அவர் என்ன பண்ணுவாருன்னா, ஆத்தங்கரையில நின்றுட்டு ஒரு பிடி கையில தண்ணி எடுப்பாரு, அதை எடுத்துட்டு அந்த தண்ணியை திருப்பி ஆத்துக்குள்ளே விட்டுருவாரு. இத கவிதையில முதல் வரியில வர்ணிச்சிருவாரு. கவிதையில முதல் வரியில இதை சொல்லிட்டு கடைசி வரியில அந்த வார்த்தை எழுதுவாரு, இப்பொழுது ஓடும் நதியில் எது என் நீர் அப்படின்னு முடிப்பார். இப்பொழுது ஓடும் நதியில் எது என் நீர், பிரிக்க முடியாது. This is what I mean by seeing or looking into the objects, as Matthew Arnold has very beautifully said. Looking into the object as they are, as they are not. These are the things that we have to take into consideration. So, it is the eternal question that is always posed in front of the teachers, whether I am a teacher being in the state of being, or whether I am being in the status of becoming, whether I am on this side, whether I am on the other side. So the question is before us. Every moment is a learning moment, every moment is a teaching moment for the teachers and also for the students. We are both teachers and learners simultaneously. That simultaneous presence of the processes of two things are very necessary for every one of us to go into the normality of life, to experience the intricacies and subtleties of life, to experience the intricacies and subtleties. This existential process is actually painful, but at the same time beautiful. Painful, of course, but it is beautiful. To see the beauty in pain is the beauty of aesthetic values. So this is what I have to deliver. But this morning, what happened to me, I did not know. But when I woke up, I had the inner urge, because when Dr. Bhuvaneswari was introducing me as a teacher that who has published too many poems, I had some words came into my mind. And immediately I began to scribble down certain lines, and I would like to read out that poem, which is written in English. And with that reading out of my poem, I think I will finish my session. The poem does not have a title, but the poem is about a poem. The poem is about a poem. I have used many words taken from different branches of knowledge because our subject today is how far a maths teacher can make use of art, how far an art teacher can make use of science in his explanation of literary principles and concepts and themes. A poem is a pollinator. A poem is a pollinator. It spreads its life like a flower to attract another flower heart. A poem is a pollinator. It spreads life like a flower to attract another flower heart. A poem is an organic form and it survives by negating its inorganic condition. A poem is an organic form and it survives by negating its inorganic condition. A poem is a mathematical equation balancing the act of living by adding, subtracting, and multiplying its varied forms. A poem is a mathematical equation balancing the act of living by adding, subtracting, and multiplying its varied forms. A poem is a mixture of microbes. A poem is a mixture of microbials. A poem is a compound of various biochemical products of emotions and feelings. A poem is a compound of various biochemical products of emotions and feelings. A poem is a computer program coded with words, sounds, and rhymes. A poem is a zoological space having its own butterfly effects. A poem is a zoological space having its own butterfly effects. A poem is a form of existence having its own theory of relativity and quantum physics. A poem is a form of existence having its own theory of relativity and quantum physics. A poem is an economical product coming out of a man's productive force. And finally, a poem is an aesthetic being having its own crisis of to be or not to be. Thank you so much for your patient listen. I finish my.
Thank you so much for your wonderful speech. Really, it's really inspiring. And we learned a lot from you how to teach the students in the classroom and what they teach. Thank you. Sir. It's a wonderful question when you have delivered your speech despite feeling the
Thank
sorry,
you.
sir. Thank you so much for your speech. Now, if there was some questions, if you have any queries or comments, you just ask that. Dear participants, if you have any queries, please unmute your mic and ask your question. I think there is no question.
Okay.
Okay. Now I request Dr. Ishwari, PG and Department of English, Saurashtra State, Madurai, to propose the talk time.
Good morning, all. It is an honor to deliver the vote of thanks for today's insightful FDP session on the role of teachers in enhancing aesthetic values. On behalf of everyone, I take it a privilege to extend my heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Elangovan for his enlightening discourse, beautifully encapsulated in the thought-provoking theme of beauty is teaching and teaching is beauty. Dr. Elangovan's perspectives on the interplay between aesthetics and education will always remind us of the profound statement of Walter Palter: all art constantly aspires towards the condition of music, poetry, and life. Thank you, sir. Sir, as a sensitive teachers, we carry the profound duty to teach aesthetic values to our students. Sir, we thank you for emphasizing the importance of inviting classroom dynamics where cordial values are cultivated. Sir, here are my few words for you, like just beginner's words. Excuse me if there is any mistake.
Okay.
கார்த்திகை குளிரில் அதிகாலை எழுந்து இணையத்தில் சிதறி கிடந்த இதயங்களை அழகாய் பொறுக்கி ஏஸ்தட்டிக் வேல்யூஸ் எனும் கருத்தால் இணைத்து பிகமிங் அ டீச்சர் என்ற மலர்ச்செண்டின் மகத்துவத்தை அற்புதமாய் பகிர்ந்த எங்கள் டாக்டர் இளங்கோவன் சார் அவர்களுக்கு அனைவரின் சார்பாக மனமார்ந்த நன்றிகள்.
அருமை அருமை அருமை, ரொம்ப நன்றி, அருமை, ரொம்ப நன்றி. So I thank the organizers, especially Dr. Sumitra ma'am, for constantly asking me, I don't know, in one sense, of course, whatever request that she makes, I immediately accept, whether it is delivering a lecture or coming to the board of studies or viva for her wards or whatever it is anything from Saurashtra College, I immediately attend, and I should thank the organizers of this FDP program for addressing the participants from various colleges. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I hope my session would have been definitely useful for the teaching community, and with the message that I have given to you, that we should all become teachers of values. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so
May I
much.
leave, ma'am? Yeah, it's okay. Thank
Yes,
you.
sir. Yes, sir. Sir. Thank you, Bonu, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Sumitra ma'am.
Yeah, sure. Start the next.
Ma'am, please wait for 5 minutes, ma'am. I'm connecting the next session.
Okay, sir.
Yes.